Hi, I wanted to share a little bit about some experiences that I've had that I'm still learning to understand, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm a little over 50 now, and about, I'd say maybe 5-6 years ago, or around the year 2011, I was learning healing work, doing my own healing work for myself, working with some other people, and for some reason began to really question whether or not I had direct contact or been in contact with beings. At the time I was thinking really in very physical terms, beings that weren't human, weren't from this planet. Around that time, and I think it was around 2011, 2012, I remember having a dream that it started out like a very mundane kind of dream where I was at like a grocery store or something, and there were a small group, like 4 or 5 of people, men dressed in almost like robes, who gathered near me and began chanting. And the dream, the quality, the sensation, the feeling of the dream shifted very much at this point. And I remember in the dream kind of thinking, like, is this, I thought, like, I didn't know what it was, but I remember noticing in the dream how unusual it felt and trying to figure it out. But there was one of these, I'll call them men, that was closer to me than the others. And they weren't all facing me, but they were all chanting, or a sound was emanating from their chest. And it was the same vibration or frequency. And I was mesmerized. It was really beautiful. It wasn't a song per se, there weren't words, but the sound was so amazing to me. And I was just, I guess, frozen, just really taking it in. And what I remember about that dream and about that experience was the intensity of that sound, and at one point the strength and the power of that vibration, it caused the same sound to begin to emanate from within my chest, and it welled up from within my chest. And I remember waking up literally in tears and crying, not even like sad. It wasn't sadness. It was just a very incredible sensation to have this sound well up from within my chest. And it was clear to me that they, I guess, found me, or located me or whatever, and created that experience or helped that experience to occur. So it felt so otherworldly, I guess, for lack of a better word. I remember I had a session with a person that has written a few books not related to this topic, but on other spiritual healing topics. So I spoke with him and told him about the dream. And I also remember at one point in that call asking specifically and explicitly, do you know, was I abducted by extraterrestrials or aliens when I was a child? And his response surprised me. He said that it was he said something to the effect of, it wouldn't benefit you to know the answer right now. And I remember being pretty frustrated by that. Since then, I've come to understand the wisdom and where he was coming from, and the love, really, in that answer. But it definitely, at the time, stirred me up a little bit more and got me thinking. And so I think I was probably watching some videos or something, and remember coming across somebody saying something to the effect of, if you believe you were abducted or had contact, they said something like, just open your mind and ask, for the memories. Just ask, for it, and see what comes up. And I remember that night being really surprised because, again, this is probably around 2011, 2012, somewhere in that time frame. I instantly recalled what I had always thought of as a dream. I've always remembered the dream and never really thought about it since I was a very young child. So this earlier experience was around, I had a number of experiences that I've since began to piece together, and that was more of what I wanted to share in this recording. And a lot of this started and occurred when I was around the age of 4. I remember we moved around a lot when I was a young child, but I remember where we lived in the country in Ohio. It was around 1970, and I had what I had always thought of was a dream of going up a column of light into a ship that was levitating, just silent and completely still and hovering right outside my home at night. We actually lived in a mobile home at that time in the country, off of a country road, and there was a lot of fields and open space around us. And I remember loving living out in that area. I spent a lot of time outside as a kid, felt very safe outside. But I just always remembered this experience of going up into the ship. I don't remember much about being inside the ship. So it was, again, around this 2011, 2012 time that I was starting to question things. And I was in my mid-40s at that point, and I was really able to ask myself the question of, would a 4-year-old, how much would a 4-year-old know about these things? I mean, I don't think I was spending very much time at all watching television back then. Sci-fi was popular, but I don't know. It just seems very unusual to me now, looking back, that I would have had such a clear experience and memory, and the way I feel when I think about it is different as well. And so since then, I continue to just be open and do a lot of healing work and pondering, and so when I think back and remember some of the experiences from this time, I remember a lot of out-of-body experiences. I remember a lot of those experiences you have when you're falling asleep and you feel like you're lifting up out of your body and you snap back in. I remember in that very same home, around that very same time, there was an experience where I thought I saw my parents walking down the hallway to get me, to take me someplace, or they were approaching me. And I remember so clearly feeling afraid because they weren't my parents. My parents were, I already knew they were in a different part of my home, and these two beings that were coming down the hallway were projecting basically some sort of an image that they were my parents, and they weren't, and I knew it. And what's so striking to me is, not even now as I talk about it, just the feeling I get in my brain, the tingles, because I knew they weren't my parents, and I wasn't supposed to know they weren't my parents, is the feeling that I get. So I was able to see through the projection somehow, or see through the illusion, and that was not expected. And so to me now, looking back, it really feels all so connected. The going above going into the ship, going through this column of light, being lifted up. I also, this morning as I was writing down notes, I remember that when I was around that age, wherever we would drive a lot, we lived out in the country and we would go places, and I just remember always feeling like I was being followed by something in the sky. I used to love the movie The Wizard of Oz, and I would imagine for some reason that the witch was on her broomstick in the sky in the clouds just following me, or I would be very careful about where the moon was. I always needed to know where the moon was, and the man in the moon always felt like was watching me. So again, was this an active imagination of a young boy? Maybe, but now looking back, it's just interesting to me to kind of listen to this voice, listen to the child, and the sensations that he had. Another thing that I'm trying to figure out, I remember 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, I had a book, that was a book of astronomy. It was a book of pictures of the stars and the star systems. And in my memory, it feels like a very big, very thick, heavy book, like a college text almost. And what is so odd to me now is I don't remember where I would have received that book, and I don't know what happened to it. All I remember is being very young and carrying that book with me wherever I could go. I would take it out at night. I would go out into the country, out into the fields, and just sit and study it. I just remember being really almost obsessed with this book. And now looking back, it just seems very odd because my parents actually didn't graduate from high school. That they didn't have a college education. We didn't have a lot of books around back at that time. I don't know how I would have come into possession of this book. I didn't have family members that gave us books. We didn't have a lot of books in the house. So I really don't know. It's just a very specific feeling about the book, and it just feels connected somehow. I felt very interested and almost, I guess the word is obsessed that keeps coming to mind, about wanting to understand what was in that book, and what, something about stars and star systems. So, and another memory around that time is that I remember spending a lot of time with praying mantises, which, again, I've always known this, I've always kind of remembered it, but it just seems a little odd now, or a little out of place, because it almost felt like I would be excited to get up and go hang out. Like I would go outside, and I just felt like somehow I was in a different world. I was in a different place. And again, maybe I just had a very active imagination. It was summer, and praying mantises are unusual bugs, and maybe I was just a kid, having unusual experiences, or unusually active imagination, or maybe it's a normal active imagination. I don't know, but the feeling now is different. I mean, when I look back and when I think back, it feels more like I was spending time with beings. So I'm aware of the possibility, of this masking concept, or of how memories can be masked. So of course I question that as well. So I wanted to share this. I don't know what constitutes normal these days, but in the world that we live in, I have a job, I'm college educated, I have children, so I'm trying to make sense out of things like many of us, and I'm not interested in drama or fantasy in this way. I really just, I guess, curious, and there's a part of me that just wants to know the truth. It wants to know what has happened, mostly so that I can heal from it and be free from it, so that I can have a life that's free of some of the difficult or uncomfortable feelings that I feel may still be connected to this stuff. So I hope this helps in some way. Just share another facet of the types of experiences that some of us have, and that's it. Thank you.